Hello and welcome to the Stacking Dinger Show. I'm your host, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep. This, of course, is your home for all things underdog and DraftKings MLB Best Ball. And we are here. It is pitching week. We have the top half of pitchers by ADP today. And we have some new, fun, exciting guests that have never been on the show. This is a little bit mysterious this week. It's going to be joined by two guests that are going to be in audio only mode. So, keep a little mystery. We, of course, not of course, I haven't introduced them yet, but what we're doing this week is we have two guys from 1 week season. You might know them from their excellent football DFS and best ball content. And we have two guys. We have Xandamere. Xandamere, are you there?
I'm here. We're actually only on audio because we're actually the same person with different voices and different voice acting.
Excellent. Xandamere is here. He's online at Xandamere on Twitter. Obviously, his work is over there on oneweekseason.com. And also we have Larejo, who is at LAREJO123. Larejo, are you also there?
I am here, and we're not. I'm not on video because I just want you to like me for me. So,
well, what's that say about me? Being,
you're the host with the most.
I'm the host with the most. So we have these guys here. Xandamere, just for those who don't know, what exactly are you guys doing over there at 1 week season for MLB Best Ball?
Yeah, so Autosnet 1 week season is always been primarily an NFL site, NFL DFS. If you're familiar with JM to Win, Jordan Toline, it's his site. Been an NFL DFS player for years. I started writing for 1 week season. I don't even know how many years ago at this point, writing mostly showdown content, but MLB baseball was always my first love of a sport. It was the first sport I was a fan of as a kid. And I love baseball. I will always love baseball. And so when I started seeing Underdog putting out sizable MLB Best Ball contests, when I said to JM last year, hey, there's not a lot of MLB Best Ball content in this space. Like, would you be okay if I made some and put it on the site? He said, sure, let's try it out. And so we did. And it was a great year last year. I made multiple rosters into the finals of different tournaments. Some of our users made rosters into the finals. Larejo here, I believe, at least made one or two rosters into the finals of the Dinger. I think that's right, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. And then Larejo pinged me this year and was like, hey, I like MLB Best Ball too. Let's do a show together. And so we did, and it was great fun. And so we have a subscription service. It's $29 for the full season. You get rankings that are updated. I don't want to say daily because I honestly don't update them. There's not news to update them daily. I think people who say they update rankings daily are kind of faking, to be honest. But I update them whenever there's relevant news. You get strategy content, right? There's a whole bunch of strategy content on our site, in our Discord. We do draft videos. We do slow draft videos where we make a bunch of slow draft picks so you can sort of see how rosters are taking shape and all the strategic decisions you have to make, like from roster to roster. It's just a different way of looking at draft videos. So we've got a ton of content. I think it's a modest price. We've always been super customer friendly. So what we tell everybody is if you're not sure about it, try it out. Like, pick it up. If you say you don't like it, it's not for you, just send us an email. We'll give you a refund. Like, we want people to try it, and we want people to feel confident they can try it and not be risking their money. So if you try it out and you're like, you know what, this is not my jam, no harm, no foul. Let us know. We'll refund you. But I'm confident if people try it out that most of you are going to like it.
Excellent. And Larejo is that true? Did you get two or multiples into the Dinger final last year?
We had one, but it was, I think, 2 years ago now.
Okay.
For some reason, and I'm still trying to get to the bottom of this, I've had more NHL Best Ball finals teams than baseball or football. Never made a football final on Underdog. So that's the one that keeps eluding me. But I'm also not a very high volume player, so at 1 week season, I'd like to think that the few people who hopefully engage with some of the content that I write, I try to just kind of be the I'll say casual, but also maybe more relatable in a way, content producer, in the sense that I'm not ever really getting in there with a ton of volume, trying to just have some fun, trying to enjoy a hobby. This is always stuff that I'd be doing anyway. And so the more I've gotten involved with 1 week season or the best ball or daily fantasy world over the years, the more fun it's been, regardless of sport. Xandamere and I were actually talking the other day about the strange correlation that pops up with hockey and baseball, which we can talk about if there's time later. But yeah, it's fun over at 1 week season. We have a good time in football season, and we're certainly expanding the product, which is always a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. I think everybody listening to this probably knows JM Twin for sure from his stuff with Pete over is that and yeah, I'm not a huge volume football player either myself, but definitely check out that stuff. And then so it's for kind of on the weekly side for the draft games there, and as well as sometimes you guys will have free stuff, and it's really interesting. I'm not too much into the daily NFL stuff as I was maybe 5 years ago, but reading some of the stuff you guys have, you approach it differently in a good way.
And so, yeah, I think so. Right. And like at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of parallels between best ball and DFS in that you're playing a game of strategy. Most people think you're playing a game of sports knowledge, but at the end of the day, what you're really playing is a game of strategy. Right. So in DFS, you're trying to build smart rosters that are well correlated and that are somewhat off the beaten path to some degree, depending on the contest you're in, and trying to sort of outthink your competitors. And best ball, it's the same thing, right? You're trying to build rosters that are different than other rosters drafted from the same draft position, and build well correlated rosters, which is especially important in baseball. Maybe we'll do a hitter show someday where you talk about hitter correlation. Same basic concepts, right? You're trying to outthink your opponents, and most of them think it's about sports knowledge and is this hitter better than this hitter? Is this wide receiver better than that wide receiver? But that's very much like table stakes. Everyone knows that. Everyone has projections that tell you that, basically. And so really it's about strategy and trying to outthink your opponents more so than pick the best players. And that applies to NFL DFS. It applies to MLB Best Ball, applies to NBA DFS, everything you do in the sports world.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and we're kind of going on the opposite of that and kind of talking about players tonight, but that's all right because I know we're going to do good.
It's also fun.
Yes, that we before this year started, I tried to get a survey out to many people, and just as many people want you to talk about players as they do about strategy. So we try to keep a balance here. And we've gotten good feedback on these pitching rundowns or the position rundowns. So our goal is always say one thing about every relevant or almost relevant player. But tonight we have the top half of pitching. So in the one way or another, all of these guys are going to be relevant that we're going to be talking about. If it's your first time joining, we have this layout here that we have displayed on the screen. I do not have the fancy slides that we normally do, but we'll be scrolling through this beautiful sheet made by Billy. And as you'll see, it has the player, their team, ADP, the round that they're being drafted in, the positional rank, and then the meat of the stuff here is projections. We are using the BatX projections by Derek Carty, which is new this year for his on the pitching side. So that now includes a pitch model that he has put together over a few years. If you're interested in that, make sure to tune in next week, as I do have plans to have an interview with Carty next week and talk about this new pitching stuff. So we'll do that later, but for now we have his projections, and it is converted over an underdog scoring. It shows the projected innings for the player, the underdog points per inning, the K per inning projection, and the K minus BB percent. And K minus BB percent is kind of the simplest way to maybe talk about a pitcher's skills. So that's kind of why we have it here. We've done, interviews in the past with really hardcore roto guys, and when you ask them what's the best stat for pitcher, and that generally is just looking at the K minus BB percent, you can tell a lot about a pitcher. Again, so that'll display based on how many strikeouts they get, minus the walks, and that kind of gives you just a general idea of what that pitcher is. So rather than just talking about these first three guys, Tariq Skubal, Paul Skeens, and Garrett Crochet, Xandamere, let's talk about just these guys in a bucket of they're all going kind of similar, but they're going far ahead of the rest of the field. So this is always a debated topic, and each year you find different people going for these early pitching studs. So, what is your general thoughts in the past? And then this year, is it any different?
Yeah, my general thought on this is that they're all awesome pitchers, and I will draft very little of any of them. So we now have years of data on MLB Best Ball, and the thing with best ball is it's different than managed leagues, right? A managed roto league, like if you get 120 innings from Skubal, that sucks. You wanted more, but it doesn't necessarily destroy your team if they're high quality innings, because you can drop him and pick up someone else, right? And if he gets hurt, if he needs top surgery, right? In best ball, you can't do that. You're stuck the entire year, and pitchers are fragile and they break. And every pitcher is healthy until the one pitch when they're not. Yes, there are some trends you can look at for like past injury predicting future injury, and that's primarily around shoulder stuff. But outside of that, it's like every pitcher is healthy until the day they're not. And so if all pitchers are one pitch away from, a season-ending injury, like I just shy away from investing a ton of draft capital early. And because of the format of underdog, where outfielders are so heavily valued, right? Each MLB team starts 3 outfielders. So just the basic math means there's roughly 90-ish outfielders available to you who are starting players. Some of those guys are platoon players. Outfield goes quick, right? There aren't a lot of high caliber outfielders. And so when you're drafting something else in the first couple rounds, you're missing out on a position that dries up very, very quickly. And so it's not that I don't think Skubal and Skeens and Crochet are awesome. They're awesome. But there are so many good pitchers late, and there aren't very many good outfielders late. So the opportunity cost of drafting or pitching early is immense. Like, not only do you have to make sure your pitcher doesn't get hurt, you need them to not just put up a good season, but a season that really separates from the pack in a really material way. Like you need the Garrett Crochet season.
Yeah.
Last year, Garrett Crochet is 1,400 points. Like Skeens last year scored 1,200 something points. That's awesome. He was amazing. Won the Cy Young unanimously. But 1,200 something points, it was a really good pitcher score, but it doesn't lap the pack, because there were lots of pitchers last year who got into the 1,000 to 1,100 range. And so Skeens beat them, but he didn't beat them by as much as the outfielder 10 beat the outfielder 50 by, right? There's more separation in the other positions. And so they're great pitchers. I will have a little of them because at the end of the day, I don't want to make huge stands in the first couple of rounds, because all the players in the first couple of rounds are players who can put up a score you had to have in order to win. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not willing to make that bet, right? I'm not willing to bet my entire season that one of these guys won't put up an amazing season. But I'm definitely going to be way below the field. And I'll scoop them up if they fall a little below ADP. That's when I'll say, you know what, I'll maybe grab a share or two. So I have a little bit of each of these guys, but I'm, so far 2 to 4% versus the 8 point something percent that you'd expect from an average distribution in 12 round draft. So I've got 2 to 4% of each of them. Love them as pitchers. Just the strategy and all the data we have says that they are extremely risky picks who are unlikely to pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. Larejo, I have noticed in drafts lately, the Skeens and Crochet pieces are being paired a lot with Judge and Ohtani on the left side of the board. So I guess generally, what's your thought about getting them in the round 2 with some of those top tier outfielders? And then, what I guess if you have other general thoughts.
The first thing I would say is just generally, you almost want to, the way I look at these three, I almost want to just label them as 1A, 1B, 1C, and then mix up who's 1A, 1B, 1C, because they're all premier pitchers, right? There's no, Skubal's going to have the higher ADP, Crochet's a little bit lower, but for the most part, they're clumped together, which is appropriate in how you kind of teed this up, Sheep. I think you can have an archetype as a best ball player, or a drafter in general, right? I like the Skeens because he's this, massive human being who's younger and he throws hard. He's won a Cy Young. He's a high-profile guy. Pittsburgh has a good ballpark, etc. And you can favor him, right? But I think you always want to keep yourself open to some sort of variance, as Xandamere mentioned, with just sprinkling in shares, even if you're like the biggest Skeens guy, that there is. You always want to, you just don't know what could happen, right? And so if you cluster these three as the very clear top three, which of course they are, then you kind of let the draft board fall as it does. So you mentioned Ohtani and Judge, let's just say picks 1 and 2, and then you get to that 2-3 turn, and generally at least two of these three pitchers are available. If that becomes, for me, it's more of, does that become a really common pairing? And if so, then how do I stray away from it? And if it does now, then I also would kind of look back at previous drafts and hope that maybe I got that a little bit earlier, if that makes sense, because the board is also always evolving, right? So if the point in time right now is Skeens and Crochet around that turn, either maybe you pulled one of them forward, a couple of weeks ago or a month ago into the, teens, and then, or got one later, at 26, 27, and maybe that was Skeens and not Crochet. And now their ADPs are slightly higher. So I would just look at trends and all that, and then you just try to always be different and always be open to variance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can actually go ahead and put these next three guys into a second bucket. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Christopher Sanchez, Hunter Brown. Obviously, we look at the projections here. Yamamoto is projected currently much lower in terms of volume, even though last year he had a huge volume and then additional volume in the playoffs. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, because I don't think there's really an injury related thing. That might just be Dodgers related 6-man rotation stuff. I guess, Xandamere, let's maybe address that first. That is a topic that people talk about a lot. And, just ahead of all the Dodgers pitchers, how do you value the likelihood of Dodgers and maybe some other teams going to a 6-man rotation, and that compared to the value of the 2 start weeks and just how valuable those are on Underdog?
Yeah. So this makes me think of, in NFL, teams talk about having both their running backs on the field at the same time, and they never actually do it, ever, except the occasional very rare trick play. But it always tricks people. People are like, oh, they'll have the Lions are going to play David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in the field at the same time a lot. No, they won't. Teams talk about 6-man rotations a lot too. They very rarely actually commit to it, at least for a long period of time. Because at the end of the day, teams want to win games, and you win games by having your best players. Now, the Dodgers are a bit of an aberration, because the Dodgers, in terms of talent on the roster, are so far and above any other team in MLB in terms of just the density of talent they've compiled on their roster, that maybe they're going to do it differently. But also, all those plans go out the window when injuries start showing up, right? Blake Snell's already looking likely to open the season on the IL. What happens if Emmett Sheehan goes down early? Then all of a sudden there's a gap in the rotation, and that 6-man rotation, they say, no, we'll go back to 5. So I don't really put a lot of trust in the 6-man rotation thing. I mean, maybe they start with it, but there's so many unknowns that maybe they don't plan to do it at all. Maybe they start with it for the first month as they're easing guys in and then back off. Maybe they, guy gets hurt and then they go back to 5. Who knows? What I do know is this. The Dodgers have historically been one of the most aggressive teams at managing their pitchers and not pushing guys past 200 innings or 180 plus innings. Yamamoto had a lot of volume last year. You said it was 173 innings. That's a lot. In today's baseball, that's still a healthy amount of innings. But where did that place him in terms of the most innings thrown by a pitcher last year? It wasn't the top 10. I don't actually know what it was. Let's see, 2025 innings pitched. Let's go see real quick. I think it was probably in the top 20. Let's see. Nope, he was number 28. So yeah, he was pitcher number 28 in terms of innings. So 173 is good. And at the end of the day, on Underdog, we care more about when the innings take place, right? When your innings hit, it matters more on Underdog, as opposed to say drafters, which is season long. But the days of 200 plus inning pitchers are gone mostly. Three pitchers reached the 200 inning plateau last year. Those days are mostly gone. But I do think that Yamamoto is probably like the 160 projection. I know that Cardi's always a little bit conservative on his innings pitch projections. He has been for years. And so you could say that like maybe that's a little low, but you could also justifiably say a lot of them are a little bit low compared to like where they pitched last year, where we think they might pitch, where we think they might pitch if they're healthy. But he's working in injury percentage chances too, right? So like, yeah, it's not if he's fully healthy and makes 31 or 32 starts, he probably beats 160. But there's also a percentage chance he goes 30, and so that kind of weights it a little bit lower. I do think that of these guys, Yamamoto deserves to have the lower innings pitched projection. I mean, Sanchez was one of the three guys who reached he was one of the three guys who reached 200 innings pitched last year. Hunter Brown reached 185, so a full 12 innings more, roughly 2 starts worth of innings more than Yamamoto. So like they deserve to have a higher median innings pitch projections than Yamamoto. The flip side of that coin is this. The per innings production, those are based on rates that are probably fairly stable. The variable here in terms of how the production will actually be is innings. That's a huge variable. So like Yamamoto 160, look where he ranks. I mean, his underdog total point doesn't rank very well, but if he does make it to 190 based on his high per points per innings, he's going to crush, right? And that same we'll play into this later on as well with guys like Hunter Green and Chris Sale. If they exceed their innings projection, they could blow away the guys ranked around them. Whereas say a guy like Logan Webb, who's projected for 196 innings, there's not a lot of upside to that innings projection. Same thing like Christopher Sanchez in our tier here and Hunter Brown, like there's not as much upside in their innings projections. Like Yamamoto could get to 190. That would modestly surprise me, but it wouldn't be outrageous. 190 is not outrageous for a SP1, an ace. But it would surprise me if Christopher Sanchez got to 220, right? That's plus 30 for each of them. And so I think that there's more volatility around the innings projection for the lower innings guys. And so I kind of like them for that reason, because I think there's more upside, right? Like if they stay healthy, if they don't get hurt, if they're in a competitive race where the teams care about the games down the stretch and they're not saving them for the playoffs, then there's more ceiling. Like Yamamoto could get plus 30 innings in that projection. I don't think Sanchez or Brown could get plus 30 on their innings pitch projection. And so if you assume that the production per inning is accurate, like that gives Yamamoto more ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one of the most important things you said there is when those innings come, because as we know, we're looking at these 200 total numbers and how much they get, and the underdog season itself doesn't encompass that period of baseball. It encompasses, we have the big first period, and so if a pitcher is being managed early on, or they're just going 5 innings, not getting much, team isn't letting him go past the 5 inning mark, that kind of stuff. Like if we're not getting the innings when we need them in the contest, that's also a thing to keep in mind. All right. Larejo, out of these 3 guys, they're going all relatively similar. Do you have a favorite, or again, here, are you just, 2A, 2B, 2C, like the first group?
I think out of these 3 with Yamamoto, Sanchez, and Brown, I prefer Sanchez in a vacuum, but no decision is made in a vacuum, of course. I think it's really interesting, just the different, as you go down some of these names, the feeling that you get when you think through the I'll just say projections and what kind of comfort that leads to, right? Because just in that inning discussion, if you think about a guy like Yamamoto, it's like, well, he pitched a ton of his career obviously in Japan, and so we've only seen him in the States for a season plus, and he had that 173 innings, and then he pitched to the World Series, and so there's a little bit of do they have a fatigue there, and do they limit his innings for all the reasons we talked about? Christopher Sanchez, okay, I think he's over 180 the last 2 years. I was just looking at, and then Hunter Brown, he's gradually grown the last 3 years, and now he's in kind of the prime of his career. And so it's such a mental game when you're looking at these different names and thinking, who's going to get there this year? Projections are incredibly hard to get right. And it doesn't surprise me that there are no 200 inning projections, because why would you project any of these guys to throw 200 innings when you are a pitcher in Major League Baseball, and the stress that puts on your body? So I prefer Sanchez in a vacuum, but I also kind of fully recognize just the range of outcomes, I guess, for those three.
Yeah, I will just note, I'm with you on Sanchez. I will note as well that Yamamoto's ADP, when I started drafting like a month ago, he was a very clear number 4, kind of in a gap by his own, by himself, and I was totally avoiding him at that point. And then his ADP has fallen. Sanchez has been rising, and so the ADP shifts, the market shifts over time, right? And so that's important to pay attention to. Like Yamamoto at pick 40 is like a no for me, because he very much belongs in the tier, not as like a separate, tier of his own after the big 3. And so like now that he's fallen out of that into where he's kind of more like around the next group behind him, like I like him better in this ADP.
Yeah, absolutely. This is often where I'm starting, or not often. Sometimes I start, if I'm starting an early pitching build, a sort of thing. Sanchez had been where it was. That ADP, I like that. It's round 5, so you have the ability to get 3 outfielders and an infielder, or like 2 and 2, or even 4 outfielders, and depending on where you're going at infield later, that I feel comfortable here throwing in a pitcher more so than I did before, when we start talking about the the opportunity costs of taking a pitcher in this round.
Yeah, I'd say probably maybe half my drafts I have a pitcher before in round 6 or before.
Okay,
so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so this is like that's usually as early as I'll go, with the exception of like the handful of the big 3 guys when they fall past their ADP by a fair bit.
Right, absolutely. Larejo, we have Logan Webb there next. He is at ADP of 58. One of the things that is rewarded in underdog scoring is the quality start. So while he, we talk about the volume over the whole course of the season, he also benefits from being the sort of guy that pitches long into a game too.
For sure, he benefits from the home ballpark. He's been over 200 innings the last 3 years and 192 the last 4. So just insane volume, and also rare predictability from him. Dare I say that? It's kind of uncomfortable even to say that he's going to reproduce those innings counts, and of course the output, the raw score. But I'll ask you guys, if you look at the first 6-7 names on this list, let's take it through like Cole Reagans, and we'll get there in a second. I mean, Webb is probably the most boring of those picks, and I think most people would agree that that's but if you're building out a roster and you've got, in your first 4 or 5 rounds, and you're I'll just say you're taking some chances, he's a perfect anchor for a pitching staff in that round 5-6.
Yeah, for me, he's a guy. He's one of those 8% sort of guys. I don't want to be over or really under on him personally.
He's not the kind of, I don't want this to be a let's bash on Logan Webb, but I don't know that he's the one that you're going to put on your X account and say, look at my exposure for Logan Webb, because it might say a lot about you. Not you personally, but we like safety, we like predictability, we like to make sure that we're going to compete.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say Logan Webb last season had the highest strikeout rate of his career, backed up by the second highest swinging strike rate of his career, and second highest called strike and whiff rate of his career. And that makes him more than just like an innings workhorse, right? Because like we care about innings, obviously. We care about getting to the quality start mark. But the problem with the downside to Logan Webb, not problem, for years has been the innings are it, right? He's going to get you innings, he's going to get you quality starts, but it sort of caps the ceiling, like I was talking about earlier, because he's not going to get plus 30 from that 196 innings projection. And so where does the ceiling above that 1,100 points comes from if you're investing in early pick? And if he gets the raised K rate, if that sticks from last year, he looks a lot better. The question is, will it? I don't know. I just don't know. it looks like kind of an aberration, right? In his career to have a K rate above 9. He's only done it one other time. And generally, he's more like a 7 to 8 K9 kind of guy. So it's like, is that going to stick? I really don't know. But I do think that if it does, it gives him some more ceiling on top of that. But I also think there's a bit of an illusion of safety, right? Because like every pitcher is a workhorse until they're hurt, and every pitcher is injury prone until they're not. Like Garrett Crochet for years was the prospect who was ace-like potential, but could never put it together because he was always hurt. And then one year he wasn't, and last year he threw 200 innings. Garrett Crochet would not have been on my short list of guys to throw 200 innings as starting pitcher 2 years ago. Jesus Luzardo was hurt all the time. Great year last season, didn't get hurt. Carlos Rodon was hurt all the time. 195 innings last year. So like, it's really like we see humans see patterns. Like that's how our brains work. And so we see pitchers who don't get hurt and we think they're not going to get hurt again. We see pitchers who do get hurt and we're like, oh, injury prone. But like, there's largely not a lot of truth to that, right? It's the same thing as like flipping coins over and over and being like, this guy flipped heads 5 times. He's really good at flipping heads. No, it's just, this is how it played out that way. Logan Webb just hasn't gotten hurt. Doesn't mean he won't. And so I do think we have to be careful of those labels and thinking like Webb is safe and this other pitcher is not safe because he's been hurt before. Like with the exception of a couple types of injuries, there's not a lot of predictability in pitcher injuries. And so like if you think that Webb based on talent is ranked there, cool, no argument for me. But if your basis for picking him the highest of this next tier is you think that he's more likely to stay healthy, I would say that is dangerous logic to be embracing, because all the data we have on pitchers says that you can't predict pitcher health with much accuracy.
Yeah, and one of the things related to it is how much innings they pitched, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that we can predict from pitchers' innings is how much they're going to pitch the next year, but also increases the likelihood of injury. I think that's a great transition though into the next two guys, Brian Wu and Cole Reagans, who going into last year, Brian Wu was the guy that you thought was the most injury prone out of the Seattle Mariners, and he ended up carrying that staff in terms of volume. And Cole Reagans is a guy that has a ton of skill, and he is labeled with the injury prone thing. Now, both guys did, I guess Brian Wu had the injury towards the end of the season last year. And, one of the other things we talk about often is kind of trying to avoid the guys that are already injured sort of thing that were injured at the end of the season. We're hoping now they're healthy. We've seen that bite us in the butt with like a Spencer Schwellenbach already this year. So I guess Larejo, I'll just open it up. Brian Wu, Cole Reagans, both at different times have injury prone labels. But actually, I'm kind of surprised here as I'm saying this, but Brian Wu's UD per inning is quite lower than Cole Reagans. But those two in general, Larejo, what do you think about them?
Yeah, surprisingly for Wu, a 185 inning target or projection seems a little aggressive, but I'm sure there's a lot of logic behind it. I think Wu from last year, he was a spring training video darling. I believe there were a couple of starts where he was just absolutely unhittable, and I believe that also kind of boosted his stock, especially towards the end of the draft season. Reagan, similarly, I mean, he's electric when you watch him. Very high strikeout guy. I think he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries by now. I'm sure that's baked into 152 innings as a projection for him. I think they're both fine. I think the one point I'll make on Wu, coming back to him, is just the Mariners staff is just filthy, and they're just one of those teams that just seems to have this never-ending pipeline of pitchers and prospects, whether it's Wu, Gilbert, or Kirby, or grabbing Luis Castillo, who wasn't homegrown, but he's an anchor there as well, and then they have a whole slew of prospects, in the system too. So I do consider Seattle kind of one of those system teams. So Wu, based on where he lands, and Gilbert similarly, just kind of taking them for what they're worth and getting the shares that I can, and not overstating the injury history on either of these guys.
Yeah, I just always have a tough time staying away from Cole Reagans. did it a bunch last year and kind of bit me, but he's
Mhm.
just so exciting to watch when he's out there and healthy. Xandamere. Next up, we have Logan Gilbert. You kind of mentioned we are in the middle of the round 6 now. ADP about 667. Specifically, Logan Gilbert is one of those guys that has a ton of pitches, is always kind of a tinkering type of guy, and a lot of the fantasy, like real in-depth fantasy pitching guys love him because of that.
Sorry. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if you're done. Where's this tier ending? Reagan's Gilbert cease? Is you thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. So, or was it Reagan? We already mentioned Reagan's a little bit. So I'll start with Gilbert. Gilbert's one of my favorite pitchers. He is incredible. He was a Cy Young favorite for a while last year until he got hurt. I've been high on Gilbert for years. He doesn't walk anybody. His walk rates are awesome. His strikeout last year's strikeout rate 11.9 strikeouts per 9, highest of his career. He was untouchable. He doesn't have a lot of innings on his arm. Like he's still, this is his 5th season last year, so he's 28 years old, but he debuted kind of late. So he doesn't have an extreme number of innings on his arm, and that's what you care about, right? Let's say like Logan Webb's throwing a lot of innings in his career, despite it being fairly young. And those innings add up, right? So Gilbert, he is Woo's my SP 5 after Sanchez. Gilbert is 6 for me. I also love the Mariners pitchers, and I will talk about there's a strategic angle why I like the Mariners pitchers as well. Also, home ballpark is amazing, but also the Mariners pitchers, we care about 2-start weeks because how you get real spike performances in best ball from pitchers is 2-start weeks. I would rather have a mid-range 2-start pitcher from one of the ADP 150 crowd who gets 2 starts. I'd put them up against Scooball getting 1 start in a week for who scores the most points, right? 2 starts is so important. And one of the things we can do to sort of smooth out our 2-start weeks a little bit is having pitchers on the same team. So if you stack pitchers on the same team, you're more likely to go have a 1 2-start week, then 1 2-start week, then 1 2-start week, as opposed to 2 2-start weeks and then 0 and then 0 or something like that from 3 random pitchers who were just randomly distributed. So there is some edge, I think, in drafting multiple pitchers in the same team. It's not huge. I'm not going to be I'm going to stack pitchers from one team on every roster I build, but it's kind of it makes a difference to me when sort of choosing between multiple similar options. So if I have Woo on my roster already, and then I'm choosing a pitcher in the 90s and I'm thinking it's Kirby or Joe Ryan, I'm probably going to lean Kirby. Or a late round of my last pitcher in the end of the draft, I might take Bryce Miller if I already have a Seattle pitcher. So I do think there's an advantage in stacking multiple pitchers. It's a small one, but small edges add up over time. And so because of that, I do bias myself a little bit towards Seattle pitchers because I think all 5 of their starting pitchers are rosterable. It's a little harder to stack, say, Blue Jays pitchers or Royals pitchers.
Yeah, and you're never stacking Washington Nationals pitchers because you're hoping to get more 2-start weeks out of them.
No, I want as few Washington Nationals starts as possible. In fact, right? I don't think a single one of their pitchers is draftable.
Right. Extreme example, but that's kind of how I've always framed it to people. You want to like the pitcher that you're stacking to begin with, not just getting it just because they're the same team.
Yeah, and I do think Reagan's is super interesting. His projection, this is an example of the super high per inning projection with low innings, right? Yeah. So Reagan's, when he came back from his injury, his last starts last year, he was lights out. I don't even remember the stats at the end of September when he had a few starts, but the start of the season, he didn't pitch well, and then he got hurt. And there might have been an injury nagging there, right? But then when he came back from that injury, he was lights out. And so that, you said don't draft hurt guys. Woo also pitched in the World Series, so I'm not super worried about him. But I'm not worried about Reagan's injury either, right? He came back healthy. The only thing I worry about is the injury was a rotator cuff strain, and shoulder stuff does have a history of recurring. I'm not worried about the Tommy John thing for him because he's had 2, but it was the last one was 6 or 7 years ago. So that seems fine. But I do think that of this tier, he's the one who has the most upside because again, if he gets to that 180 inning mark, which he's done before, then this projection looks way different, right? Like if you change that innings to 180, and that, I don't know if the formula sheet actually tracks that and it calculates that dynamically like that, but his projection would be really good, right? Because he has one of the highest, what does he have, like the third or fourth highest, points per inning projection. He's got a higher points per inning projection than Skeens and Crochet, which is odd to me. But like, look at that points per inning, 6.38. So Scooball's higher, and Sale is higher, right? So he's third. So that's insane. If he gets to 180 innings, he's going to crush. So I think he's actually a high variance pitcher, but great. And I will say, like, this is purely anecdotal, but I feel like of this tier, he's the one I most often see drop into the low 70s, because I do think people are scared of the injury history. And so again, purely anecdotal. I don't know how this plays into the math of the ADP you have there, which of course is updated as March 2nd. Like, this is recently pulled data, but lately I feel like I've seen him drop into the 70s in a few drafts. And when he drops like that, I'm like, I will scoop him up every single time in the 70s.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting for him. He's specifically a guy that if he's looking good in spring is going to not drop and start rising. So he's had one start at this point and looked amazing. So I don't think we're going to get much more of that drop. But I agree that does happen.
And so I really quickly note, because Cease was in this tier, I'm kind of down on Dylan Cease. Like, he's had 5 years in a row of 32 plus starts, which is like, also, that's what healthy pitcher. That's what you want. His career high is 189 innings. So like 33 starts, but he has yet to average 6 innings per start because he's really inefficient with his pitches because his command sucks. His walk rate is high. And as you noted, right, like quality starts are really critical in underdog scoring. And if you don't average 6 innings per start, it's really hard to rack up quality starts. And his ERA is only like okay. I'm looking, oh my God, where is he? I'm looking at this list right now on MLB of quality of a MLB.com sorted by quality starts. And I was searching for Cease, and he's not even on the first page of the rankings. He had 8 quality starts last year out of 32 starts. Like, that's really bad.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
I was actually going to put him and Peralta together. They're both kind of in that same bucket to me. Freddie Peralta doesn't have the quite as high of a K rate, but as a Brewers fan myself, watching his starts, you don't have to look at the stats to know that he has a very similar problem. He always has. This is anecdotal, but it plays out in the stats. He always has an inning that just goes way too long.
Yeah,
and he'll recover, and he'll end up fine, but then he's out after 5 innings because, like you said, inefficiency.
Yeah, Freddie Poe had 13 quality starts last year. Not great for like a pitcher at that. Like, had more quality starts than Dylan Cease? Andre Palante from the Cardinals, Davis Martin from the White Sox, Jake Irvin from the Nationals with his 5.7 ERA. Like, Grant Holmes, who only threw 21 starts. Like, all these pitchers, like, you look at where he's ranked in quality starts and you realize how important quality starts are. And it's just hard for me to get super excited about Cease. And it's not that he's not a good pitcher. It's just that his style of pitching precludes him consistently going deep into games. And there's so much value in that.
Yeah, I think, the counterpoint is the strikeouts there.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Larejo, next up is kind of a guy that every year we say the same thing about, if Hunter Green pitches a full season, he's got, a Cy Young award just waiting for him.
I'm beginning to think this is going to be the year that he does this, because I think I've avoided him mostly in drafts so far. You want to talk about Reagan's being tantalizing. If you've ever watched Hunter Green pitch, I mean, you watch the first inning, he usually blows away, 2 of the first 3 hitters, then gives up a home run, to lead off the second, and you're immediately like, why am I doing this? Not that I've done that recently, because I haven't, but once you do it, you're like, look, the upside's there. He's got all the tools. I mean, he's basically he's Paul Skeens without the results. It's probably a bold thing to say. So maybe the results will be there. I mean, the ballpark doesn't do him any favors drafting Reds frontline starters. The only one I could really think about recently is Sonny Gray, who was decent enough when he was in that ballpark, but it's generally a minus EV play. But another guy that I think it's totally fine if you don't have a pitcher until Hunter Green on this list. right? And then you kind of start from that. Hunter Green, maybe Chris Sale, Max Fried, the next guys we're going to talk about here, and go from there. But yeah, he is. I'm going to probably start drafting him a little bit more, if I'm being honest, because once you do get those feelings, and then you start to realize that the upside is there. If he ever does put it all together, is going to be the one that we needed to have.
Yeah, I guess I'll stick with you. Chris Sale is a guy who has put it together and had that Braves Cy Young season. He's there at 155 innings. I think similar ideas about these two guys. Just Sale has done it, but he's also much older.
Yeah, really well said. And then it's a matter of, would you like to be there the year that they do it, or are we chasing our tail a little bit when Sale puts this together, last couple of years, and then now it's maybe a little more dicey. But I think what Sale has shown us last couple of years is that he's a competitor. I don't know, not that any of these guys aren't competitors, but I think he had a rough go, right? He was in Chicago, then he was the next coming of everyone, traded to Boston, then kind of has some seasons ups and downs there, punches the wall, breaks his hand, goes out to Atlanta, and then all of a sudden kind of reclaims. And I do think the age and kind of the experience, I'll just say, Kevin Gossman's another one of these where they've been through wars, so to speak, with injuries and just longer careers. And so Sale is someone, I don't like him at his current ADP, if I'm being honest. I just think that there is a lot of inherent risk there. But if and when he's on some of my rosters, I think you do feel like, he's now, I don't know what's going on with the Atlanta Braves rotation. I'll just put that to the side.
They're all dead.
Yeah, I think you can feel okay about drafting Sale. Yeah, they're becoming an avoid, Xandamere. I don't know. I'm getting worried.
Well, you know how you said there's some teams that are like good at taking care of pitchers. Like the Mets, right? The Mets for years have been the don't draft a Mets pitcher because they break all of them. And like I don't know what it is with the Mets, but like they break every pitcher they have. And like the Braves are like this spring, man. Like what is going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to put a couple more guys together here, Xandamere, for you. Max Fried and Framber Valdez, two guys that are green on the innings total, white on to the UD per inning thing. But these, especially last year for Max Fried, but multiple years now, Framber Valdez is a quality start sort of guy, kind of a Logan Webb light.
Yeah, I tend to shy away from guys where so much of their value comes from their innings projection because again, like there's just not a lot of upside to that innings projection. And I don't think there's all of a sudden, I don't think that at this point in their career, we're going to see Fried or Valdez like suddenly see a significant spike in their K rate. And so absent that, like where do you get the ceiling? So are you drafting for the projection, the projection number that's right there in Underdog or the projection that's right there in the spreadsheet there? Like, would you be happy with that? Or are you drafting because you hope to get more than that? Now on a whole roster, you're not going to beat the projections on every single player. Sometimes you need to get players who get you their projection, and that's fine. But ideally I want to draft players where I think they all have a realistic chance of beating their projection. And so I always think like, how safe is the projection? And with any pitcher, the answer is not very safe. Any pitcher in the world. And then, so, okay, fair enough. Then how likely are they to beat the projection? And it's like, and where does that come from? And so like Framber has gotten to, 1,200 points once in his career. He threw 200 innings. Okay. Could that happen again? Possibly. 26 quality starts in 2022. Like that's going to get you a lot of quality start points. He can get that. 26 is pretty extreme for quality starts. Like the MLB leader last year had like 23. 22. Leader is Logan Webb with 22. So 26 is pretty extreme. I don't think that's happening. He's also 4 years older than that with hundreds more innings on his arm. So like the odds of that seem low. So how does he get to 1,200 points? His K rate spikes a bunch? Unlikely. So I just don't see it. Like, where's the ceiling? And kind of the same with Fried. I like Fried better than Valdez, a little bit. I think he's on a better team. But similarly, it's like, okay, he got to 1,164 points last year. He had 19 wins. We know that wins, I mean, there's some correlation with team wins and individual player wins, but like pitcher wins are highly volatile. 20 quality starts, that seems replicable. He gets like, so I could see him getting to that like 190-ish innings mark with just about a strikeout per inning, getting to that 20-ish quality start mark. Like I can see that. That seems reasonable. He's probably not getting to 19 wins again. That seems unlikely. So take a few win points away. He's around 1,100 points, and like, okay, that's more than the projection. I'd be okay with 1,100 points there, but again, it's not great. So these pitchers are more like good than great to me. Now, it's common for me, like this is a common area where I draft my first pitcher, and if they're my first pitcher, I want someone who I think has a low chance of failure, because regardless of when you draft your first pitcher, if your first pitcher fails, you're probably in trouble on that roster. And so these guys, I think both have a low risk of failure. I also think they have low odds of like crushing their projection. And so how I play them is based on the rest of the roster. So like, I don't think I'd want to draft Fried or Valdez on a roster that already has a starting pitcher. Because like if I already have like a Brian Wu or Reagans or whoever, like I've already drafted my ace pitcher and I'm banking that ace pitcher hits. And so now I want to stack up ceiling behind that ace pitcher. Because if that ace pitcher fails, my roster's already dead. And so I don't care. If the ace pitcher hits, then it's like, okay, how do I find more ceiling behind him? And so I want guys with ceiling, not so much floor. Now, if Fried or Valdez are my first pitcher, I'm more okay with drafting them. So like I'm fine if they're my first pitcher drafted, not so much if they're my second pitcher drafted. That's kind of how I think of both those guys. And generally it's how I think of those like more floor than ceiling guys overall.
That's really interesting because I kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum there, like especially talk about Wu and Reagans, two guys that, you know, have huge upside. I kind of like having a Fried or Valdez as, you know, a safety blanket, so to speak. That if those other guys are down for a month with one of their random injuries, then I still would have an ace. So that's interesting to hear you say that, because for me, I'd be worried about trying, because a lot of the ceiling here is already comes with risk inherent in the ceiling.
Yeah, like, you know, I think the point here, the real point takeaway to me is that there's more than one way to play best ball. You know, I'm not saying your strategy's wrong. I just think that, like, for me, my assumption is always draft as if I'm right. And so, like, if I draft Reagans, I'm assuming Reagans throws 180 innings. And I'm assuming that if Reagans gets hurt at some point, that roster's already dead. And like, maybe I get super lucky and I hit on everything else on that roster and it works out magically, and hooray, it could happen. But I don't want to plan that way. I want to plan for, like, I draft Reagans. He's an awesome starting pitcher. He's like a top 3 scoring starting pitcher. And so behind him, if that's the case, then like, I don't need a Fried as much throwing his, you know, his 190 relatively low point innings. I need more guys who can rotate and mix in ceiling performances with floor performances. I think more volatile guys. But again, that's not necessarily to say it's right. You know, it's just, that's my style of play.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why. Yeah. I wasn't saying you're wrong either. I just thought that was interesting because, definitely the opposite of how I think about things. Larejo next, though, is Jesus Luzardo. He had a real, we'll say, a roller coaster of a season, some really bad outings, but, you know, sitting here in the 8th round, ADP 86, he projects just as well as the guys around him.
I like him a lot, if I'm being honest. He's what, second year now in Philadelphia, so you're not getting the, you know, sometimes when these real human beings, I should say, actually have to, you know, move and change teams and all that. There's just sometimes some what's the right word? Just can't really see it on the field effects to their performance. And, you know, who knows? Maybe first year in the new with the new team and the new city and all that could have affected his performance with Philadelphia. But I like that he's more settled in now. I like that he also has Sanchez kind of covering as the anchor, the ace, the clear ace in Philadelphia, and obviously that team and the offense is pretty stacked. So yeah, to me he's a pretty comfortable projection here. I like he's got 175 innings and nearly a 6 point UD per inning. I think he's he's a good click in this range. I do have him above Framber as well, and they're almost polar opposites in the way that they approach the game, just with kind of the strikeout rates and things like that. So yeah, I don't mind Luzardo at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Xandamere next then is Jacob deGrom. Well, I'll just let you go then with that laugh.
I mean, DeGrom is the epitome of like if he's healthy, right? Like DeGrom has been the if he's healthy guy for years. DeGrom is the pitcher that like baseball players, fantasy baseball players, both best ball and otherwise, have dreamed on for years, right? Like I'm still looking at his history. It's been in the league for so long. I mean, I remember when he came on the scene, and he was a horse for 3 straight years, and it was like. And then he kept showing up for like a few innings per season, but the skills never went away. Like he never looked worse. In fact, he often looked better in these short stints where he'd throw like 60 or 80 innings and he'd strike out, 14 guys per 9 innings or whatever in these shorter seasons. But he just had like year after year after year of getting hurt. And this is the point, though, is that pitchers are hurt until they're not, and they're healthy until they're not. And so like no one wanted DeGrom last year, because he was the guy who was he was undrafted in most leagues last year because he was the guy who was always hurt. That was the time to draft him, right? Like, it's not that he's a bad pick here. He's a reasonable pick here. And if he beats his innings projection again, like he did last year, he's probably a fair value at this kind of like close to pick 100. The problem is not, is he a fair value or will he get hurt or will he be healthy? The problem to me is, you're buying him at sort of the peak of the market. And I kind of have this problem with Luzardo a little bit too, that both those guys are guys with extensive injury histories who no one wanted last year because they were always hurt. Then they have a good season where they're not hurt, and now their ADPs have spiked. And it's like, they're fine, totally viable to draft them. But to me, I feel like there are pitchers later who were like DeGrom and Luzardo were last year. And it's like, those are the guys I want to be fishing for. I want to be fishing for the guys who weren't healthy last year, who nobody wants, and you can get in the last round, versus paying like what I think is kind of a ceiling price here for DeGrom and Luzardo. I think we're paying like the peak of market value because they're just coming off of good, healthy seasons. And like, I don't like paying peak value. I want to pay the discount.
Yep. The next one there, Larejo, is Spencer Strider. He was one of I was on him last year quite a bit, hoping that we saw the bounce back. We did not see a bounce back. He's just been kind of pedestrian, and already this spring people are worried about the velocity in his first outing.
Yeah, what's the move here? Do we wait 10 days and then draft Strider when his ADP drops into the hundreds, and just or draft through the uncertainty? What's the Warren Buffett saying? If you want to basically buy when there's blood in the streets, right? Everybody's running away. It could be one of those situations. He's only a couple of years removed from a 20-win season. I'm a little weary about what's going on in Atlanta, similar to Sale. But it's very possible that both he and Sale are going to anchor a rotation that will actually be pretty strong. So yeah, it's another situation I think where ADP would want to dictate exposure to Strider. We can't expect him to do what he pre-injury, what he did, a couple of years ago, where he was going in the end of the first round, second round, I think maybe 2 years ago on Underdog, and followed it up with a nice, 2-start season. But yeah, I do think he's a very polarizing player right now. That goes without saying.
Yep. I don't know what to do. I think for me, it's like every week I decide something different. Like I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm buying back in, and they're like, no, I can't do it. So I'll probably end up over the field on him again, but it'll become in like weekly pockets. All right, next up, George Kirby. We're into round 9 now. Xandamere, a pick about ADP 100. You talked about Seattle Mariners. I assume similar things about George Kirby then.
Yeah, so Kirby is sort of like similar thing with Mariners. Love the Mariners, right? Love Mariners pitchers. But it's also worth noting that like Kirby is another one of the sort of floor play, like, more of a floor play than a ceiling play to me. Good real life pitcher, good at keeping the ball in the park. good at not giving up a ton of runs, not so good at like generating big ceiling performances because his strikeout rate is just much more modest than most of the other pitchers being drafted around him. That said, much like Logan Webb, he has the career high strikeout rate last season. And so similar to Webb, it's like if you believe that's sticky and that it's likely to continue, well, then Kirby is, I think, very draftable there. Now, it's worth noting that high strikeout rate was backed by a career high swing strike rate and a career high called strike whiff rate. It was also backed by a career high walk rate. So it's not clear if it's intentional that Kirby was trying to pitch for strikeouts a little more, not so much flooding the zone as he has in the past and sort of daring hitters to beat him, but refusing to give in and walk anyone. Maybe he was trying to nibble around the edges a little more, leading to more strikeouts, also more walks. Probably a net benefit because his walk rate was still really elite despite being elevated from his career norms. So I think that he's in that sort of Fried, Framber, Webb, like a little more floor than ceiling, but the price is much cheaper than Webb. And I see where there is some potential ceiling because there is that elevated strikeout rate. And he's 28 years old, but this will only be his 5th season in the majors. So he kind of debuted late. And so he doesn't have a ton of mileage on his arm. And so like when someone's in their first few years, it's like you're more likely to see them evolve and change as a player in the first few years than the later years, like when they kind of are who they are. So like maybe he is changing, maybe he is evolving. Like the fact that the strikeouts and walks went up indicates to me that he's actually, and his strike rate went down per pitch. So like it indicates that he is pitching around the zone a little more, trying to, maybe not give up as many hits by refusing to challenge hitters every single pitch and trying to nibble a little more around the edges, leading to more strikeouts and a few more walks. If that's the case, that's a good change for his underdog fantasy value because walks don't hurt us in underdog, and strikeouts help us. So I'm in on Kirby at this ADP overall. I do think there's ceiling here with the elevated strikeout rate from last season. I love guys with elite fastballs and just big fastballs because I think that skill set is like your breaking pitches will come and go, your feel for them from start to start. But like your fastball is always going to be 90 whatever miles an hour. And if it's a good fastball, like you can always rely on that as opposed to like really breaking pitch heavy guys who will just have disaster starts from time to time because the feel for the curveball or whatever just abandons them. And that happens to every pitcher from start to start. So I like pitchers like Kirby that have, elite fastballs. So I'm in.
Yeah. Maybe generally, I think this part of the draft is the kind of the meat of pitching this year personally. And I mean, we see, early on we saw 3 or 4 guys in each round. And now we're seeing, 5, 6 guys going in each of these rounds. So this is really the meat of pitching. Next up is Nick Pivetta, and he was a guy that we always kind of hoped for volume. He was a guy that I was always personally chasing, hoping that he would get volume, and he's kind of always had little injuries here and there. And last year we got it, but then the strikeouts went down. So he had 180 innings, but then a career low or not career low, but trended down from the last few years in the strikeouts. So he's a guy personally I think is a little bit too expensive, but as we go through here, his projection looks fine along with the guys around him. Larejo, though, next up, Joe Ryan, another guy with some spring concerns in the health area, supposed to be fine. Even talking about now that even though he's missed a little bit for back stuff, that he still might pitch for Team USA at some point. I guess he's kind of a polarizing guy because he has a kind of an up and down sort of things to his starts. So Larejo, Joe Ryan.
He's another one of those guys that you don't really want to watch his starts. You just want to see what happens afterwards.
I'm with you.
Right, Freddie Peralta, Dylan C, some of these guys. I like him a lot here. I would certainly rank him above Pavetta. I think Pavetta is an easy pass at this ADP. He should be in the 120s in my mind, or 130s.
Yes.
He fits that perfect definition Xandamere mentioned before of the buying extremely high when he's coming off a career season. And unfortunately, therefore, he's priced for that reason. But yeah, Ryan is in my opinion, he should have a better season than he had even last year, and he made the All-Star team last year. Do I have a lot of facts based on that gut feel? No, I do not. But do I feel like the ballpark plays to your advantage with Minnesota? Definitely cold weather in the beginning of the year and towards the end of the year, that's important. And yeah, just good stuff. And I would feel comfortable at his age and kind of prime years. And it's odd seeing him around Pavetta, who's kind of the veteran, has a steady Eddie. He was a third or fourth or fifth starter in a rotation until last season. And then Nolan McLean, who's a complete unknown but total phenom of a prospect. So Ryan does stick out to me as the guy I'm clicking out of those three.
I've got a data point for you. Look in the right column. Look at the K-minus BB for Ryan compared to like all the guys around him above and below.
Yep.
Like right there. Ryan's like one of those guys who I feel like we've been waiting for him to sort of like, if he puts it all together, he could be a Cy Young contender. And it's like, it's sort of like Hunter Green. Well, Hunter Green's not put it together. Hunter Green's like, don't get hurt. But if it's like Ryan's like, he's always missing one thing. Like the home run rate is elevated, or he's leaving, or he's like the BABIP's too high this year, or he's leaving too many guys on, or he's not getting enough guys left on base. Too many guys are getting a base and then scoring. There's always like one thing for him, or he gets hurt a little bit. And it's like there's always one thing for him that seems to hold him back from a truly awesome season. And it's like, well, what if one of those doesn't happen? Right? Like he doesn't need to take a leap forward. He just needs to like not have any of those one bad things. I don't know. I don't mean to jump in because you're talking about Ryan, but like I'm very much in on him here.
Oh, and that's a drafting as if you're right proposition, right? So if you even did wait until the hundreds, or he's your second pitcher, you're putting your eggs in the Joe Ryan basket, and I think you can feel good about that. Will we be right? Who knows? I don't know. But there's a lot of indicators, assuming his back is okay, obviously, because that's not something you want to. If there's you hope it's not a smoke and fire situation, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one here is Nolan McLean. You mentioned him, Larejo. So let's stick with you on him. He's the first off the board here of the guys that are super big prospects. I mean, Paul Skeens is kind of past that, but this is like the Paul Skeens of a year ago, right? Maybe not quite as high of a pedigree, but he was there last year on the Mets, and he looked pretty good. I'm personally skeptical about this 152 number for him. Like, I'm not going to debate Cardi on the rate stuff, or what exactly Nolan McLean is. I'll just say that we saw him last year, but he also got up to 160 some innings between AAA and the majors. So I'm a little bit personally suspect on this number. I think that could be higher, and I think the Mets actually, they brought in Freddie Peralta, but after that, it is kind of question marks.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's almost too many question marks to draft him at opportunity with the opportunity cost here, where you're really trying to round out your staff. I don't have a lot of McLean. I don't plan on having a lot of McLean. There's just he was good in the limited time last year. He just stopped hitting, I think, at the end of 2024. He was a two-way player, even through the minors up until I believe it was 2 years ago. And there's clearly a lot of natural talent. And could he put it together? Absolutely, he could. But you're betting on just a little more of a risky situation, and I do think it's hard to. I would say when you start looking at a guy like him, though, if you did have a staff, quote unquote, that is a couple of proven guys, and you want to mix in McLean, totally fine. I wouldn't necessarily go drafting McLean and Mizorowski and Yasavage all on one roster, right? for obvious reasons, but just generally, I think McLean's gonna fit the mold of a roster, of a very particular type of roster, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, though, is not a young guy, Xandamere, Sonny Gray. Kind of, once he got over another guy that, was always injured, but once he's gotten over that, he's kind of been pretty consistent recently.
Man, I feel old because Sonny Gray helped me. When Sonny Gray was a rookie and got called up, he helped me win a fantasy league that year. I remember that so I also have a soft spot for Sonny Gray. But like, man, does that make me feel old, because he's 36 now. I think that in our league format, like generally speaking, we fantasy players tend to overrate the shiny new thing and underrate the boring veteran. And so I tend to like boring veterans a lot because we can dream on the upside of Enola McLean. We know what the upside of Sonny Gray is, and it's solid, but it's not, world beating, right? The thing that worries me about Gray is that he's always been a crafty pitcher. He's always been good. He's always, had been able to strike guys out. He's healthy. If he's healthy, he can get to the high 170, 180 plus inning mark. The problem to me is he's going from a relatively offensively weak NL Central division on the Cardinals in a pitcher's ballpark to Fenway Park, which is one of the premier hitters parks in the league in an absolutely stacked AL East. And so I worry about the run environment for Gray. Like, I just worry that it's going to be harder for him to maintain the rates we've seen from him because all his projections, it's hard to adjust those for ballpark. But I worry, man. I worry that and especially as he's getting older, right? He had an okay, not great season last year, a 4.3 ERA, the highest whip he's had in years and years and years. It was fine, but it wasn't the previous seasons with the Twins in 2022, 2023 are much better. And so it's is he starting to fade as he gets older? I mean, everyone does, right? Old man time comes for us all. He's 36 years old. And then now he's moving from a pitcher's park in a weak division to a hitter's park in a tough division. That terrifies me. The combination of the age plus the environment changing, that just makes me nervous. And he could still be successful, but I think the reward you get if he hits is not high enough to justify the risk. And so I would rather bet on guys where I think the upside is greater.
Yeah. Larejo, you said somebody should be in the 120s. I think the same thing for Sonny Gray, a few rounds later, and I'm all in. The next guy, though, Larejo, Mackenzie Gore also changed a location and went in the opposite direction from in the Nationals, kind of friendly hitter park to now the Texas Rangers, which has been one of the most pitching friendly parks the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's. I wish we still had the National League pitchers hitting, because then you could say he's he's going to the harder division, harder league, and all that. But obviously the NL still uses DHs now, so it's totally different. He's. I was trying to remember where Gore was ADP wise last year, and I'm pretty certain he was in the high hundreds of drafts, and he had almost really identical. Is that right? Yeah, I think it was about I don't know what round that is, 16, 17, something like that. He had almost at the face value, almost identical seasons last couple of years, and now of course isn't on the Nationals anymore. So just interesting. It feels a little high for me here. He doesn't have a ton of upside. I guess the K's per inning looked decent here, but he could be 10 spots lower, and I wouldn't have a problem with it either.
Yeah, actually, talking about all of these guys and just how all of them kind of go in this group, I feel like just them all smushed together. Zach Wheeler's a bad example, but let's say Yuri Perez versus Nick Pivetta, all these guys could be going interchangeably, and it almost feels like some of where these guys are going within these rounds is just kind of random, just how they ended up. And now, they don't fall because everybody's grabbing a pitcher here. So somebody's going to grab these guys. So their ADP never really goes up or down. Like nobody, well, maybe some of these, like Nolan McLean, maybe somebody's really in on and grabbing him early. But a lot of these guys just kind of sit here now that they've landed here in ADP because everybody's grabbing pitchers here, and they're nothing really big about them. Any of them is going to make them fall a ton either.
Yeah. ADP begets ADP, right? A lot of people draft and they're like, oh, this guy's 6 picks after ADP. I should take him. He's a great value. And so like they kind of get picked within that range.
Yeah. The next guy though, Kyle Bradish, came back last year. Xandamere looked elite. He's a guy who has been injured. He's got this 134, one of the lowest inning projections that we've seen. And if you go off of what he did last year, you'd think the underdog per inning would be higher, but hasn't really consistently shown health and or the elite level.
Yeah, I think the per inning mark is wrong, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a young pitcher still. So like his rookie season, he showed some promise, but wasn't especially great, right? Like in 2022. 2023, he was a Cy Young contender. 170 innings, 2.8 ERA, strikeout per inning, good control, good home run suppression. He was the 4th runner-up in the Cy Young Award that year. He was awesome. Then 2024 started the year off great, got hurt. And then 2025, end of year, he came back. So he's really only had the one injury, right? Like it's really just been the one injury. It just took him out for a while. So it's not like he's injury prone. It's an injury that people come back from just fine. So like, I think there's no reason to think he will not be just as good as he was in 2023. Now, coming back from Tommy John, you sometimes see pitchers take a while for their command to come back, but it looked fine last year, and then he's had the whole offseason. So I don't see any reason to think that he would be negatively affected by it. The last time we saw him, he looked awesome. I wouldn't expect 13 strikeouts per 9 necessarily, like he showed at the end of last season in 6 starts, but like I'd expect 9+ strikeouts per 9. So the underdog, the points per inning does look low to me. And the question's the innings though, right? So like the Orioles, actually, I think it was actually Bradish himself came out and said the Orioles have a plan to, I believe the phrase was monitor his innings, not necessarily limit. I want to say that's correct. I don't know what the exact phrasing was. Do you?
It was weird because to me, the weirdest part was that it wasn't anybody on the team saying that. It was him. And it was kind of like, they're probably going to limit me. And it wasn't like, oh, this is we have a plan to limit me. So, that was a weird phrasing, and I haven't seen any follow-up.
Said he believes they'll be on some kind of innings limit. But here's the thing. Historically speaking, pitchers are usually not on innings limits after Tommy John, because pitchers are usually on innings limits early in their careers when they just have never thrown 150, 170 plus innings before, because they're playing high school and college with shorter seasons. Generally speaking, most pitchers, once they get up to that, like making 30 starts plus and throwing 150 plus innings, at that point, the innings limits are gone. Even if they get hurt, they come back, they throw. So an innings limit would be, I don't want to say unheard of, but unusual in this situation. The Orioles view themselves as a contending team, right? The moves they made in the offseason tell us they want to contend this year. And so why would you not have your best pitcher pitch? Assuming he looks healthy, like why would you not have him pitching?
Yeah.
So I don't buy too much into the innings limit. I mean, that the way I think of it is this, it does create some risk, right? Like there's certainly additional risk in his profile, but you start to get at this point in the draft, and everyone has some risk, either risk of innings, risk of, health, risk of performance. Yeah. Or just risk of being not very good anymore, right? Like, hi, Luis Castillo. So like everyone's got risk associated with them at this point. So the question is, what kind of risk are you comfortable with, and what kind of risk best fits what you already have on your roster? But I think Bradish, like I do think the underdog per inning projection is a little on the low side. But I also think the innings limit is, I don't want to say it's necessarily low on the projection, but I think that there is a lot more room to the upside than there is to the downside. Like if he's healthy, he's not getting 134 innings. And I would be shocked if he got fewer than 140, 150. And I could see him getting up to 170, 180. So I think there's more upside than downside of the innings, and I'm very much in on the talent. I also will admit I have a soft spot for Bradish because I have a dynasty league where I had him as a prospect, and like you always got a soft spot for the guys you draft as a prospect where anyone knows who they are, and then you keep them, and then they become good, and you're like, yes. So I've got a soft spot for him. I'll admit to that.
Yeah, my problem with Bradish is that I had so much of him the year he got injured in spring training and then was out. So like I was in on him, and now it's he's back and he's post surgery. Like, yeah, I want to be back. I want to be back there. All right. Next up, I think Larejo, you mentioned Kevin Gausman previously. I can't remember the context, so I'll let you just talk about him.
It might have been a former team name of mine, Death Taxes and Kevin Gausman. It might have been something like that. No, I mean, so consistent, right? But another guy who's pretty old. I think he's 35. It's 35, 36. But he's just been so consistent. But he's likely peaked in his career, right? So you're paying for the innings here, or hoping for the innings and the quality starts and all that. I like what you said before, Sheep, where you got me thinking about the meat of the order here, like 8, 9, 10, 11. It's almost like the bell curve of the pitchers, right? Because they're going to all shuffle in that big section of a normal distribution, but they're not going to be the outliers on the front end, obviously, and then on the back end, they're not the guys you can get at really cheap cost who could potentially move up tiers and tiers. So it is just, I generally look at these guys overall as like if you draft a Sonny Gray, go ahead and grab a Mizurowski. If you have Luis Castillo, we won't go there. But maybe you get another Seattle pitcher. So there's different ways to kind of mix and match, but you start looking at what does your staff look like at this point, and so that's where I know I strayed a little bit away from Gausman, but I think that's where you just start looking for inspiration on some of these clicks.
Yeah, and he is a guy that was being drafted way later last year after kind of a down season the previous year. So maybe you are kind of buying ceiling here, but I feel like you know what you get out of him, unlike Jacob Mizurowski, which I've said my piece on here. Everybody asks me as the Brewers fan about him, so I need an outside perspective.
I'm just going to really quickly on Gausman. The 2-pitch pitchers historically do not age well. Like Kevin Gausman was Spencer Strider before Spencer Strider. Yeah. Basically, he only throws a fastball and a splitter. And when he came up, his nickname was Gas Man because his velocity was ridiculous. And as his velocity has decreased as he's aged. Now his fastball velocity is more league average than elite, and it's harder to maintain the 2-pitch dominance when your fastball is no longer elite. So that's my worry with Gausman. Mizurowski, oh man, this is the guy you want to dream on, right? Like, my God, I mean, the Brewers. How about another pitching system? It's like Mariners, Brewers, Rays, Indians. I can't call them Indians anymore. Crap. Guardians. Sorry. Sorry, being racist over here by accident. No. But Mizurowski, like, those are one of those system teams. Like, they've turned out so many good pitchers over the years, and Mizurowski. I mean, God, the upside is so good. I mean, he's had the strikeouts are immense, right? Mm-hmm. What I worry about with Mizurowski is this. One is innings, right? Where it's like he's projected for 139 innings. He threw 129 last year across, AAA and MLB. Historically speaking, and by the way, the year before that, he was at like 97. Historically speaking, teams generally are wary of giving more than a 20 to 30 inning increase from year to year for young pitchers. So that tells us probably the absolute max he caps out as about 160. Now, if he got 160 good innings and those innings happened at good times, like they shut him down late in the season after the underdog season ends, who cares? Great. I'm here for it, right? That's awesome. But that's kind of the best case scenario for innings for him, I think. And the big risk to me, again, with Mizurowski is similar to the risk with, Cease or Peralta, is the walk rate, right? Like, that's the thing I worry about with Mizurowski, right? A walk rate over 4 in the big leagues last year. He's had a walk rate over 4 at every single stop in his entire minor league career. Amazing, borderline unhittable stuff. But when he doesn't know where the ball is going, that drives the pitch count up. And like, getting to those quality starts is so important in underdog. It's so important in our format. Like, so you've got to consider the format you're playing in. And if it's a format that really values quality starts, it's hard to see Misiorowski racking up quality starts, because keep in mind, if they limit his innings, there's two ways they could do it. One is they could let him throw 100 pitches a start, but limit the starts. That's what we'd want, I think. The other way that they could do it is they could just say, hey, we're going to cap you at like 80, 85 pitches a start, which means he never gets to 6 innings. That's what happened with Drew Rasmussen last year. The Rays did it, right? And Drew Rasmussen's first season back made 30 starts through 150 innings because they rarely let him pitch into the 6th. And so great elite pitcher, but just never racked up quality starts because they wouldn't let him go deep. And that's a viable path for Misiorowski. So I love him as a pitcher. I think he's elite. I think he will probably get the command figured out at some point and become an amazing pitcher, because I trust the Brewers coaching staff to do that, because they've done that time and time again with prospects. But I don't think that this year is the year that he's going to rack up the deep performances to get the quality starts that he needs in order to really put up the fantasy point performance that we need to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Just a couple of things to quick add is like, or piggyback on that, is like going into last year, I had I don't know, I forget where, somewhere I was on a show that was like wild or like hot predictions or whatever. And I said Misiorowski is going to be the closer by the end of the year last year, just because he has that profile where the walks, if he's in the closing role, the walks don't matter quite as much. But obviously the Brewers they're still committed to the starting thing. I do think that maybe they're going to use him. We don't see it much anymore. Like there's at one point where we thought openers were the next, like every team is going to do it, and we barely see it anymore. When the Rays
I remember that.
doing it.
Like the game is ruined. They've killed baseball.
Right. I do think that we will see some starts this year where Misiorowski is coming in from the bullpen, like they used him in the playoffs.
Yeah.
To protect him, from going 3 times through the order. Okay. Behind the scenes, you want to Xandamere, you want to talk about Yuri Perez, so let's do it.
He's one of my guys. Okay. So Yuri Perez. So I'm going to victory lap just a little bit here and say that as I put out my best ball rankings, ADP changes or it evolves, and there's some guys who move up, some guys who move down. Yuri Perez is one of the guys who I've been high on, and his ADP has been creeping upwards, and he's become a really popular breakout pick. So I'm going to give both sides, because I think there are both sides to this. The skill is undeniable. Like, go look at StatCast, high velocity, elite fastball, room for improvements on his breaking and off speed stuff, but like throws good pitches, right? Like really good slider, and then kind of a mix of like a curve change and sweeper. So he's got 5 pitches, but the fastball is elite. And I love guys with elite fastballs, because that just the velocity never abandons you, right? Like what's the saying for runners? Speed never slumps for base stealers, right? Kind of like that for fastballs, right? Great K rate, pretty good command and control for a guy with his like stuff. It's often what you see guys with that kind of stuff, really, like Misiorowski, really struggle with command and control. And Perez's walk rate is reasonable. Pitches in a good ballpark. What looks like a better, more competitive team behind him, which could help him potentially rack up wins. He's become a really popular breakout pick with a lot of analysts. So I'm certainly not the only one who likes him. The downside is also similar with the innings, right? He threw 117 innings last year, 118 innings last year. And so he probably peaks, I think that, what's his projection? 143. Based on how we see teams treat young pitchers, my concern is that 143 might be kind of towards the high end, is not the median. I think that, if he's healthy, he probably goes 30 or so innings above what he threw last year, which is about 150. I'd be pretty surprised if he went much above 150. Now, again, the question is, when are the innings, right? If they cut the innings late in the season, then we don't care, because underdog season is done by then. It doesn't hurt us. If they do it where he gets, 5 innings a start, that's more harmful to us. I think that's less likely than it is for Misiorowski, because Misiorowski struggles with racking up high pitch counts due to poor command. And so it's harder for me to see him getting to 6 innings because he might need 110 pitches to get there, and I don't think they're going to do that. Yuri, I think he could more easily get to 6 innings in a given start, and then just be pulled after that, or be kind of shut down towards the end of the season. I think that's the more likely path of how they manage the innings. So I like him more than Misiorowski. I like him overall a lot. I do think it's important to temper expectations, because I think that with all of the analysts talking about him, we're seeing his ADP rise. I like him at his current ADP, but if he starts creeping into like the 110, 105, 100 mark, like I start to get more out on him. So, price is important, right? Is the point I want to make. Like, price matters.
Yeah. It's funny that, you say he's a young pitcher. He is only 22. I feel like he's been in our brains like for 5 years. He came up, young before his surgery, and like,
so yeah, signed out of the Dominican.
Yeah. And he's one of those guys that you forget just how young they are.
I think he was like 15 or 16 when they signed him.
Yeah, because just like looking at Chase Burns, who is next, he's 23.
He's
right?
older. Yeah.
he's actually older, Larejo. He's a guy, though, that, again, we're looking at innings, only got to 100 or so between minors and majors last year, and had some injury issues. As you can see here on the UD per inning, and Cardi has put out a tweet the other day that Chase Burns is a top 10 pitcher in baseball already.
He could be by raw stuff, but ironic that he was in college 2 years ago, and yet he's older than Yuri Perez. His stuff is incredible. I don't know how else to say that. He's going to be a roller coaster ride. He's also going to be a player that they're probably going to pull after 5 innings that are, he's got 8 strikeouts or 9 strikeouts. I wouldn't be surprised. But if you looking at the visual that you have up here, right, with he and Zach Wheeler and that UD per inning, 6.11, 6.34. I think you can't fault drafters for clicking either of them here. I think, and every round makes a difference, right? Like I probably took a very different approach, just earlier. And when you're looking at a similar prototype with Burns, if your their ADP is around 100 or 103, when you get another round deeper, or to round 10 or round 11, where Yesavage is, I can never say that name, Yesavage. Every round that passes, you should be taking on a little more risk, and you should be looking for a little more upside. Very simple statement, but a powerful one. And so therefore, I think when you start getting into this, I do, for the record, I do like Perez, Burns, and Wheeler. Also really like Gavin Williams and Michael King. So it's definitely a sweet spot for me in this area for pitchers.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm worried. Moving on here to the Zach Wheeler part of it, Xandamere, I'm worried. I do not like to play the game where I'm hoping a guy that is injured and his timeline ends up matching up well with the underdog season. I'm usually out on these guys. I don't know what you think generally about these elite guys that potentially are miss a month or so and then drags on or whatever.
Yeah, Wheeler's a weird one. At the start of draft season, his ADP was around 100, and I was out because, to your point, I don't like drafting pitchers who are already injured, because pitcher injuries happen. The healthy guys get hurt enough. I don't need to draft the hurt guys. 2 is thoracic outlet syndrome is a shoulder issue that we've not had a good track record with pitchers having thoracic outlet syndrome and then coming back healthy, right? Like there's not a good track record of that. That said, his status is a little bit different, and I'm not a doctor and expert in this stuff, in that like he has something called like venous thoracic outlet syndrome or something like, which is a little bit different than the normal kind. That like there's something different about the type of surgery he had than the type of surgery that most pitchers have had on their shoulder here, that has been so unsuccessful. So there's some optimism in that the surgery Wheeler's had is different. And the weird thing to me is his ADP is falling, and all we've been getting out of him is good news.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of a weird disconnect to me, right? Like normally what you see is like his ADP is somewhere where it is, and then it's like, oh, it turns out his timeline is going to be he's just a little bit behind where they were expecting, but they're really optimistic. And then a couple weeks later, oh, he's just a little bit more behind, and then he's out half the season, right? And like that's the problem with like those injured guys. But like Wheeler, we've been getting good news. So originally it was thinking that like he was going to ramp up maybe early May, and then it was maybe mid to late April, and now it's like early April is the current timeline we're seeing. So, he's beginning a 6-week ramp up, and that would put him, that date that came out a couple days ago, and 6 weeks from that date would be April 9th. So like, we're getting good news. Now, again, he hasn't ramped up. He's not throwing game pitches. He's not throwing 100 pitches. So like we don't know how that shoulder is going to respond when he's throwing bullpens or playing catch compared to when he's throwing game pitches. So there is a lot of risk here. The flip side is that he's Zach Wheeler. He's still on skills a top 10 pitcher in baseball. And so the question is not like, do you ever draft him? Like, I think every player has a price, right? Just about every player has a price at which they're reasonable. And the question is, where's the reasonable price? Where's the price where the upside matches the risk? And so like, I think as he's getting into this, his ADP is falling towards like the, late 1-teens, towards 120. I think that to me, that's where his upside starts to match the risk. So like when he was around pick 100, I like Bradish, I like Yuri Perez, I like Joe Ryan a lot more than Wheeler. But when he starts falling after all those guys, it's like, oh, well, maybe now I'm a little more interested in Wheeler. And especially because you consider this as ADP average means, statistically, that means like half the time he goes after that. And so like what I've gotten Zach Wheeler as late as like 130 something. And it's like when I'm thinking about like Zach Wheeler versus Yuri Perez, I'm taking Yuri Perez. When it's Zach Wheeler versus like Luis Castillo, I'm taking Zach Wheeler, and I'm hoping he's healthy, and I'm betting on the upside. It's like, it's just a very different question depending on where you're drafting him. There is, to me, a point where the upside is worth the risk. There is a lot of risk. Like, it would not shock me if in the ramp up, it's like, oh, his shoulder barked at him, and it turns out his shoulder's still injured, and he's having another surgery, or he's, who even knows what happens if he ever pitches again. And I hope he does, because he's amazing. Yeah. But like, that's certainly within the range of outcomes. You have to be prepared for that. But the upside is if you get it right and he comes back in early April and throws basically a full season and is still Zach Wheeler, you're getting a pitcher who should have been drafted around like the Brian Wu, Christopher Sanchez range, and you're getting him in the 12th, in the 10th or 11th round. So it's just a risk question.
Yeah, and yeah, I just want to add on to that part about not pitching ever again. He has come out and said that, after this contract, which he's a free agent in 2028, he's done playing baseball. He's said that that this is kind of the end for him. So like, one more year, if like it does come up, like there's definitely a chance that, this is, retirement for him. Not like you said, we don't want that because we love watching Zach Wheeler pitch, but
we saw this ruin the career of Matt Harvey. It ruined Steven Strasburg. So like, it's
yeah. Yep. All right. So we got through 10 rounds of pitchers. Excellent discussion tonight, guys. We were hoping to go a little further, but I think this year the pitching preview or the rundown show is going to be 3 episodes long, just because we had excellent discussion, and I know the group we have coming, Spencer and Brad, for the next round too, also are what's the nice way to say long-winded?
I will admit I'm long-winded. I am totally long-winded. It's a joke at OWS. It's a running joke.
So the nice way to say long-winded, you and Spencer have that in common. So I know this is going to end up being a 3 episode arc. So yeah, but thank you, Xandamere and Larejo. This was awesome. I loved having you guys on. Xandamere, again, why don't you throw out what people can get if they want to jump over on 1 week season and kind of see what kind of work you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, if you head over to 1 week season right now, it's on the front page of the site, MLB Best Ball. So it's $29 for the full season, full draft season. So we do frequent rankings updates. We provide rankings that are downloadable and uploadable for Underdog, DraftKings, and drafters. We provide, actually, one thing I didn't mention earlier, we provide like a spreadsheet built tool that lets you kind of configure and tweak our projections yourself. So like, for example, if you think that Chase Burns throws 160 innings, you can easily go and change Chase Burns' inning projection to 160, and it will change his underdog points projection, and then it changes his ranking, and you can see where he would rank in the pitcher ranks if he gets 160 innings. So that's a really useful tool if you want to kind of try and tweak stuff. A lot of strategy content, stacking content, stacking. I'll just give the short version. Stacking is incredibly underrated in MLB Best Ball, and most people have not picked up on just how valuable it is. And so it's rare. Like, a lot of players don't do it at all, and that most of the people who do it don't do it enough. It's incredibly important to stack effectively in MLB Best Ball, and so it's a real edge. We talk about that. We talk about playoff scheduling. What teams have the best playoff schedules, best ballparks. So there's a lot of content, and again, we're a really customer-friendly site. So like, if you're like, I don't know if this is going to be worth it, all I'd say is try it. And, if you try it out and you don't like it, send us an email and we'll give you a refund, no questions asked. So the worst case is, you try it out, you read a little bit, you watch some videos, you get your money back if you don't like it. So really risk-free. We've been doing it. This is our second year doing it. We had a lot of success with the first year, which is exciting. Because I think there's something valuable in building a product and using it yourself and then showing success with it, as opposed to like having had success previously and then being like, now I'm a guru, you should listen to me. Like, we use the strategies that we talked about in the product and found success with it. So excited to see it this year. It's fun to see ODBS fans in the draft rooms. So come draft with us. It's really fun. You haven't drafted MLB Best Ball, like, it's really fun.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd be here if you haven't, but every once in a while we get new guys, new people, and yeah, stacking dingers. There's a reason that's we get along here. The stacking conversation. There's a reason it's in the name of the show.
Yeah.
All right. So for Xandamere and Larejo, myself, thank you for hanging out with us and watching this, and yeah, look forward to the next few episodes.